The U.S. may be a safe haven if you want to keep your job. Compared globally, the U.S. ranks amongst the highest for full-time employment. But does this come at the detriment of creativity and entrepreneurship? For more, we're joined by Bloomberg View columnist Justin Fox, who wrote on the state of U.S. employment actually a couple times last week. A couple interesting pieces, but I think most interesting is that we think of ourselves as kind of the land of entrepreneurship, of innovation, of ideas, and yet we don't have as many entrepreneurs, or at least self-employed workers, as other countries.
I mean, part of it is there's a difference between being self-employed and being an entrepreneur who's building a business that's growing really fast. But it is dramatic how low the U.S. is worldwide, if you compare with other wealthy nations, on the percentage of people who are self-employed. You would just sort of think. I don't have any great answer. It seems to be a mix of just that more advanced economies generally have fewer self-employed people.
It looks like everybody in Mexico is self-employed.
Right.
But is it also because mom and pop businesses have been squeezed out by big box stores? I take you to one of my favorite films, You've Got Mail, where, you know, Meg Ryan, just around the corner bookstore.
It's all Tom Hanks' fault.
Shows up. I mean, hello.
Well, and really the most dramatic decline is just there aren't as many independent farmers as there were 50 years ago.
Oh,
and in
really?
Mexico, there still are a bunch. But yes, it's mostly, when you look at those self-employment stats, that's why it can be a little confusing. It's mostly that it's the mom and pops, it's the rancher, it's the farmer, and in a more advanced economy, you don't have that. Still, though, compared with some pretty advanced European economies, we're a little lower.
So one of the things I noticed in Europe, and I lived there for a long time, and I noticed a lot of the women and men that worked with me would be self-employed, but then contract, and essentially they were working full-time for the companies where they were getting their money, but they just declared themselves their own AG, or whatever the corporate term is in that particular country, because it's easier. They get health insurance from the government. They don't need all the benefits that come with full-time employment in the U.S.
Well, and from the company's perspective, in a lot of European countries, if somebody is a full-time employee, it's impossible to get rid of them. I mean, France is probably the most dramatic case of that. And so what they do is structure these other arrangements, like you're describing, or a lot of part-time jobs, too.
Did any of the governments, whether we're talking about France or the United States, realize the unintended consequences and the fact that countries like France are restructuring the way they employ people to protect themselves? I mean, that can't be what the government ever intended.
Well, I mean, the country that's the most dramatic case of this is the Netherlands, which...
You see it right here at the top of the chart. I mean, it's off the charts, basically.
Yeah, and I think it was initially that thing where the traditional full-time job, companies didn't want to create many more of those. And so they, for sort of everybody who's about 50 and younger now in the Netherlands, most people were part of this totally different sort of job market where there are lots of part-time jobs, lots of, like, staffing firms, Randstad, the big staffing
I think it's
nothing
important.
to do with pot, then, you're saying.
No, but it is.
Very little.
But it is
Although
important.
that's self-employed. Those coffee shops, that probably counts as self-employment.
But it is important to point that out, because many times we point to the Netherlands as sort of this fantastic example in terms of family leave benefits, you know, sabbatical that people are offered, and Americans
no one's actually getting it.
Exactly, and Americans say, look, those people are getting 2 years. They're getting a chance to take 2 months off, except
it's a minority of the workforce.
It's a minority of people. No one realizes that.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting little factoids in your most recent piece is that part-time job in the U.S. is anything less than 35 hours, whereas a part-time job in Europe is anything less than 30. Because they need to continue to move that bar down.
31 hours?
No, they need to continue to move that bar down because they know people are trying to game the system by hiring part-time employees.
I mean, the flip side of it is if we were all in France, we'd be on vacation right now. And that's like a positive thing, too. I mean,
a positive thing for whom, though?
Definitely
for the people on vacation.
Yeah.
For the people on vacation. If you speak to corporations that are located in France, they are hamstrung. They are miserable. They can't increase their productivity. They can't hire supremely talented people who want to get paid a ton of dough. So who does it really benefit?
I feel less sorry for the corporations than I do for the people on vacation, you know?
Well, I mean, I guess because part of this is both. It's partly this inefficient setup in Europe, but it's partly maybe that we in the U.S. are too far in the direction of everybody has to work 40 hours a week and have 2 weeks of vacation a year or whatever the norm is. So I lean mostly in your direction, Stephanie, of it's a little crazy, especially, I mean, France is this sort of example of how to do it wrong. Other European countries have sort of mixed it up a little more. They have the great vacations, but it's also possible to get rid of people.
There's the headline, Francis, about how to do it wrong.
What was your biggest surprise in doing all this research where you said, what?
Well, the self-employment one. I mean, I guess I can rationalize and come up with reasons for it, but it just seems weird that the U.S. is this place with much less self-employment than other countries. One thing is we have this whole class of incorporated self-employed, which is sort of very professional, high-earning people, but they're still only a couple percent. They don't raise us up.
All right, very interesting stuff. You can find it on our Bloomberg View on our website.